Hi, I'm Bruce Burke, and we're back with some more people that are participating in the upcoming Fin+AI conference. With me today, I have the entire top level team from Sourcetoad. I have Greg Ross-Munro, the CEO. I have Gregg Hilferding, the VP of Organizational Development. And I have Justin Davis, the VP of User Experience, with me. So I'm going to start it off. Greg, could you give us some introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and give us the origin story and the background on Sourcetoad, please?
Yeah, I can. We'll be happy to do that. Thanks for having us, Bruce. So I'm Greg Ross-Munro. I'm the CEO and founder of Sourcetoad. We are a software development company that's based in Tampa, Florida, and we specialize in building software for companies in highly regulated industries. Right, so we build software largely in the financial services, education, and healthcare kind of spaces, and so we're kind of super compliance focused software development agency. And the thing that's kind of like, as with everybody, as you know, AI has dragged us in a new world, into a new direction. Every single client wants an AI system built, and so about 2 years ago, I think, almost, we made a pretty focused decision to massively focus on artificial intelligence. I mean, we'd been doing stuff like machine learning and like expert systems for years before that, but the generative AI stuff kind of came as such a quick wave that it just like washed over us, and we like focused our entire company on it, and that's where we find ourselves now. So that's the company, and I got into this world from originally from the investment banking world, if you can believe it. I was an analyst in an investment bank, doing like M&A stuff, and so I was actually in the financial services world, kind of on the transactional side. And I actually started. I didn't love it. I didn't love not building things, and so the very first project that I was kind of able to weasel my way into was building a kind of a decision engine for the M&A firm, and that was 16 years ago. And the senior partner actually funded Sourcetoad, so he saw what I had built and was like, "Oh, you should build a whole company doing this kind of thing." And so that's where we find ourselves today, like 63 something people worldwide, and building software for startups all the way to Fortune 50s.
Nice, nice. And so your background is more in discovery of companies and in the M&A space. You were doing assessments and diligence and all that sort of thing around the companies. Do you find that helpful in now operating the business that you're operating?
I find it useful in like my feelings of gratitude in what I get to do today these days. And it was useful. I mean, anytime you do anything that's not super like fun, and I know that sounds silly, but not super like it. It's not a very creative position that I had, but was also quite challenging and rigorous. And when you have that kind of combination, um, what's great is it kind of like pushes you to show you what you're capable of doing. Like, just, I'm going to turn my attention on something and I'm going to do a deep dive in it. And as a result, that's like a skill that you learn. And so when you're like shuffling through due diligence reports all day long, and you know that if you make a mistake, that, hundreds or tens of millions of dollars of a deal on the line, that it really focuses your attention. And while maybe that is not a skill that I use day to day, the fact that I know that I have that ability to like turn that focus and that attention from the days when I worked in that space actually has never left me, and it's kind of given me a confidence when I perform tasks similar to it, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I don't want to leave the other guys out of the thing here. I wanted to bring up quickly because I think it's kind of a sign of the times. There was a news article 2 days ago about Intuit essentially laying off like 10% of their workforce and kind of restructuring and they own TurboTax and Mailchimp and a bunch of other software companies that are right on the edge of financial services and probably useful to a lot of companies, right? But it was kind of like the CEO said, hey, if you're not like grabbing AI by the horns, right? I'm not coming off with the exact quote, but if you're not grabbing AI by the horns, and if you're not able to pivot to that, like right now, you're going to be left behind, and eventually you're not going to be even existing, right? And it's kind of sad that people are being laid off, but it's kind of at the same time, it's kind of intriguing that a company essentially can take it's like 10% of the management, according to some of the articles I've read, and it's reshaping the industry quickly already. Klarna recently announced they saved $10 million last year, right? In marketing costs, not just necessarily in customer service, in marketing costs, right? Because they're a pretty big firm, right? So with those thoughts in mind, what do you guys say, Greg? What do you see as like? Where do you see this going?
Which Greg do you mean?
Oh,
3G or me?
Greg upstairs. I'm sorry, 3G, Greg. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me jump in on that one.
Yeah.
I think there's a few different aspects there. The first one is about like layoffs related to AI. One of the things I do in my role is I train people on how to use AI, not just in programming, but just like day-to-day tasks. And the common refrain is AI is not going to destroy all jobs. There's always going to be humans involved, but you run a real risk of losing your job, not to AI, but to another human who's using AI. And so everything that we're doing right now is essentially about using AI to augment people and to assist people. And that to me is the big opportunity right now. There's really not actually there's not a ton of things that can be fully autonomous yet, right? So we're not really looking at like fully automating entire jobs. We're just looking at, taking some of the friction out of these processes for people.
Yeah, and there was a thing, another news article that OpenAI has now set a step level. Like right now, we're in what they call step one, and they say like fully autonomous businesses at like step 4, and I think step 5 is AGI is the thought, right? So. Justin, you've been doing this stuff a long time. You've been in the fintech stuff. You've been. I knew you all the way back when you were doing the drawer thing, which was quite the project in itself, right? That was kind of an AI, if you really think about it. What's your take on all this stuff? You're the UX guy, right? And the the user experience and the user interface guy. So what's your take on all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan, right? I label myself as an accelerationist. I'm somebody who really believes that this is going to change a lot about. It's going to change a lot about everything. Ultimately, the real question is about how fast that happens, right? I've been in technology. I've been building stuff. I've been building apps. I've been building things on the web since the late 90s, right? So about 20 some odd years of engineering experience and product experience. And this is, to me, a real mode shift in just how we think about products and how we think about interactions, right? I think that one thing that is going to be a consequence of AI is that I kind of believe that interfaces are a hack, right? Because ultimately, you don't want an interface, right? What you want is a thing done. You want a thing accomplished, right? And it just so happens that for us to do that with computers, the only real way we can do it is put like a thing in front of you with stuff you can touch to make the computer do things, right? And so that's been a very useful paradigm. But at the end of the day, it is a hack. It's still a behavioral hack, and it's a layer that doesn't need to exist. And I think that it's a layer that ultimately, if the world tries to trend toward efficiency and tries to trend toward the best experience possible in a kind of evolutionary sense, then I think it only makes sense that like the idea of how we interact with products today, the idea that you go to a website, www.whatever.com, and that you click around on buttons and things like that, is not where that's not the end game of apps and technology, right? That is actually this hacky middle part. And actually, when we get to there'll never be a final destination, but I guess maybe we could get into that whole debate, I guess. But whenever we get to where this has matured sufficiently, right? I think what you're going to see is the whole idea of how we interact with things changes. It becomes very much more conversational, and a lot of the infrastructure, at least a lot of the infrastructure that you see, a lot of the idea about the World Wide Web really starts to become kind of quaint at some point. It's going to be an interesting next decade.
So you think the internet of today will be the petroglyphs of tomorrow?
That's very possible,
right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The emojis certainly will be. I was on a sidewalk corner recently. I think I was in front of a Walgreens, and I saw these spray painted lines and codes and everything they were doing electrical or sewer or something there. And I took a photograph. I put it on social media. I'm like, in the future, people are going to find these relics from the past and wonder what they meant, and it's just schematics, right? So, but moving back to, fintech and AI, right? In doing all this stuff, you guys are working with a number of different companies. I've seen some recent stuff. You did some stuff with some cruise lines. You've done some stuff, I'm sure, with some banks. You've done some stuff with trading. In your mind, what is, it seems like the entrance point, right, into AI. A lot of companies are starting with like customer service, right? The chat bots, the this, the that. Is that the killer app for AI? Is there something that's like a whole lot more? I think I'll let 3G go on that one there.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how synonymous chatbots have become with this big generative AI push. But what's interesting is that you also hear a lot of failures from those systems. So there's a piece kind of missing, and that is being very actively worked on, which is just how to get those chatbots to not hallucinate and just make up answers that aren't real answers. And what I love about the chatbot as the big feature that everyone's focused on is it does have a lot of freedom to play there, right? Like you don't expect quite as much from a chat experience than you do from like just a data view of facts. But it's definitely exposing some of the stuff that we need to get better at with the technology, and also exposing the need to be able to audit and inspect all the inputs and outputs to these systems, and be able to tell the difference between, is this model from OpenAI the best, or is this model from Anthropic the best? So I love the entry point, but I don't think it's the reason for this technology to exist.
And we kind of jumped into the meat of the matter pretty quick. Maybe we need to back up a little bit. Greg, we really, 3G again, we didn't really give either you or Justin a chance to really introduce yourselves. So maybe you can give us a little background on you and your what you've done and maybe what you're doing now, and if you can speak about it, and then what you're doing moving forward, right? In relation to all this.
Yeah, I'll go first. Justin mentioned earlier that he's been making software for 20 years. So I just have to say that I've been making software for 25 years. However,
Greg and 2G says 30. So,
No. I think Greg might have me beat by a year, but I'm close.
What's important to me, though, is that no one reverse engineers my age from that remark. Yeah, I've been making software a really long time. Most of that was actually for my family's business for the first 10 years. And even though I built a lot of customer-facing stuff, most of what I actually spent my time on was internal productivity software, right? So any kind of business process that we had, I would look for ways to add automation to that, to remove steps for the employees, so that they could essentially sit down, click the next job that they're going to work on, and as much of it as could be done by the software was already done for them. and this was like in the 90s, right? And in the early 2000s. So if we had the technology we have now with generative AI, there would have been 1,000 more things that could have been automated. And then after that period of time, I did have my own agency for 5 years and got to work with clients again in a ton of different spaces, which was really exciting. And then I joined Sourcetoad about 5 years ago as their director of engineering. And that is when I really got most of my exposure to financial services work, the impact of security and of compliance in financial services products are just really, really high. So as director of engineering, I was always very involved in that. And it got to just be a really exciting space to play in and to work on improving. And then today I'm VP of organizational development here, and I'm really focused on training. And a lot of that is training on AI, both internally and also to our clients, essentially helping people get comfortable, familiar, and start embracing this stuff and figuring out how to work it into their everyday life.
3G
Cool.
like professionally blows people's minds. That's like his job. Like, I'm gonna blow your mind today. Tomorrow, hey, I'm gonna blow your mind today.
Well, I see, Greg, that you only do a hire, so I know I'm never getting a job there. So, so on to another a hire, Justin Davis. Justin, we know you're an accelerationist. I call myself a futurist because my friend Brett King says a futurist is never wrong today. But tell us some more about accelerating and what you've done and what you are doing and what you're going to do in the near future here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give the quick bio. I've been writing code, building things on the web since the late 90s. Started off with websites and stuff like that, and then in the early 2000s started to build apps, and did that for a while. Ran an agency focusing just on user experience design and product strategy work, and user research work. Was able to work with companies like YouTube and Google to do big national user research studies to inform product strategy of some products that are in market now. And then recently, a couple of years ago, for a couple of years, ran a fintech startup called Fin+AI that was aimed at individual investors, retail traders, to help them to do portfolio management. And really what we were really interested in is helping people to understand and have a better relationship with risk and understand how risk affects decision making in finance, and using that to make better decisions and inform your decision making when you're doing day trading or long-term investing. And then recently, after finishing that up, came over to Sourcetoad just about a year ago. And Sourcetoad is a company that I've had a relationship with for a long time. I've known both these Greggs for a long time. We have both written a lot of code together and built a lot of stuff together. And Greg Ross-Munro has kind of put together this dream team of people over there that's kind of a magnet for exceptional talent. And when we started talking about me being part of that, it was really exciting about a year ago, and really excited to be there now. And what I do over at Sourcetoad now is I'm the VP of user experience. So I make sure that the products that we're building are usable and useful and intuitive, and hopefully a joy to use as well, and can oversee a lot of the product development process to ensure that. So that's the kind of work that I do right now. And yeah, on the acceleration thing, I think that for me, I think that some of the concerns around AI, around safety are very real and material concerns, right? The alignment problem is a real and potentially material concern, right? The part of it is that we don't really know if it is or if it's not, but it's probably wise to be cautious about that. But at the same time, I think that AI is not only on the commercial side of the world, right, going to enable us to deliver much better experiences to customers and deliver much more interesting, just overall product and service experiences for people, but I think it's going to accelerate areas of research and medicine and things like that right, that are going to save a ton of lives and improve the quality of life across the world in a huge way. And for that reason, I'm all about going as fast as we can safely with it. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the tolerance for risk affecting the decision making. I did an interview, and I want to connect you with the woman. She's coming to the event also, Sarah Baldeo. She was a neuroscientist, and now she's applying the neuroscience to the customer experience, right? To come up with a better customer experience. So it's sensing what risk is, right, and those sort of things. That's the kind of thing that separates, in my mind, those kind of nuances is what separates good software from bad software, right? And good device experiences or just interactive experiences. It's what I want, right? It's what I kind of have come to expect. And I think anybody that's, once they've experienced that, they come to expect that too. So back to Greg Ross, how do you work with customers to make sure that they understand that you want to deliver that type of experience to them, that you just don't want to put an interface up with a bunch of check boxes and radio buttons and drop down boxes and that sort of thing, right? Because everybody can do that, right? I mean, I can do that.
Well, you say that. I mean, it's, I don't know, I'm not trying to like stroke Justin's ego or anything, but like the difference between somebody who can put together an interface and somebody who really like understands deeply how something is supposed to be used and actually like what that interface how it should kind of guide that person along that journey. There's a different people. Like there's like a whole different like class of people, and Justin's in like a league of his own there. But I mean, I think to get to the bottom of your question, how do you guide clients there? It's tough. You made a point earlier about how everybody they know they need to get some sort of AI something going on in their existing products or their new products, or else they're going to get left behind. And they often don't know what that is. They don't know what that entry point should be. They're like, the first thing that comes to mind is, I'll put a chatbot on the thing and you can talk to my financial data, or you can talk to my, like you can have little AI analysts that you can talk to, or something along those lines, right? And that might be a fine entry point. It really might. The thing that I agree with them about is, yes, they should be doing something in the AI space. We know it's probably overhyped. We know that the hype train has left the station, and we're probably at like somewhere around the peak, or maybe even on the downward side of that peak. But AI is not. It's not a useless made up thing. It has real world use, and it actually works well. It has limitations like any technology, but the future is very bright. And so one of the big things is we tell our clients, just let's build something so you get a feeling for what it's like to work with it. Like, how do you deal with the compliance side? How do you deal with the security side? How do you deal with the hallucination side? What other ways can you use it in your product as opposed to just a chatbot, right? Like, can it be a backend system that like provides something else, another set of data or whatever? So there's a lot of like kind of consultative talking with the client about what they really need, and then us trying to give them options about how they can dip their toe in that pool. And we have some clients who have dived headfirst right in, and all they want to do is every single thing they're building is AI related. And then we have some who are very slow to adopt it. But I would say that we have at least, I think we have 100% adoption of every single client in the entire company has some sort of AI input in their system at this point. So it's, and that's partly on us, and that's partly on the nature of the hype, and it's partly on the nature of like the actual promise of the technology.
Okay. And so the buy-in definitely starts at the top, right? For any company in any subject matter, right? I mean, if the top management is a buy-in on that, and they are able to vision cast that idea that they have, or that thought that they have about it, it should permeate throughout the organization. Fairly quickly. You're always going to have your contrarians and your contradictors and all that sort of thing, but it's really on the company to really make that happen and get that buy-in from those employees.
Yeah, I mean that's why Greg has 3G's like into that's his entire job. Greg, I'm gonna just throw that past that's here.
Yeah,
And that's exactly the segue I was going for. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about how you're doing? You said both internally and externally, right? And so. One, how are you using it internally, right? I understand you're overseeing, a group of developers and pretty much the organization as a whole, right? And then two, the customer, right? And is it different, and what's it like, internally and externally, right? Those are two big variables.
Yeah. So the thing that's really interesting about this wave is that it's basically kind of like undoing, I don't know, 50 years of how we have described software development, right? Like I have spent my entire life trying to tell people that the computer will only do what you tell it to do. It is going to follow its instructions perfectly, and if it's messing up, it's because the inputs are wrong, or the code is wrong. There's a bug in the code. But with this wave, suddenly, some days OpenAI is really hot. It's running great, and you get these amazing results. And other days, it's clocked out. Like it doesn't want to do the things it was able to do the day before.
Friday syndrome for the LLM.
Yeah. And there's studies about that. I mean, there's literally a study that's like, depending on the day of the week,
crazy.
You will get a different quality of result, and it's because it learned that from looking at timestamp.
Did you see the article about the guys that found the hack for that? There was an article. They called it the bro hack. The thing would come back with like a half answer, and they would just like type bro, and the thing would like, okay, here you go. Right. I'm not kidding you. It was an article.
Yeah. We'll just tell it it's Monday.
So these things are like, for software engineers, this is crazy. Like you don't, if your software was working the way that this stuff works, you would say that it was broken because it's not doing the thing that you told it to do. Mm-hmm. And so most of the training, most of the adoption, most of what we are focused on doing is getting people to start using it in any way possible, because there's a mindset shift that needs to happen. And for me, I like distinctly remember it about like 3 months after ChatGPT first launched, that I was like in a call with a client. They were asking about something, and just in my brain broke, because I was like, this has been a no for my entire career. This thing they want, I would just be like, no, that's not how computers work. And suddenly I was like, wait, this is a maybe, and it's very likely to be a yes. And I would not have made it to that point if I had not just been playing with ChatGPT and seeing what it could do and seeing how it broke for that period of time. So all of our training is really, it's not like how to build robust AI pipelines that bring in like your own custom data. It is stuff like, how could you use it? How could you start using it today to write better emails? How can you start using it today to reduce the amount of stuff you have to read from other people's emails that they used AI to write? That's the level that we're looking at, to get people just practicing this, seeing how it's different, feeling it for themselves. Because then when people come in and say, hey, we want our website to be able to do this, or we want our app to be able to do this, they can come from that same place of understanding now what AI can do and what it's terrible at still.
So gaining practical application and being able to use it in your day-to-day activities is a good way. What do they call it? entrance point. I'm trying to think of the right word, but anyway.
And it's all about it needs to be personal, right? It needs to be like it's helping me. We've all got stuff that we professionally or personally that we're maybe not as comfortable doing. If you can learn that AI can help you with that thing, then that is the moment that it all makes sense to you, that you can suddenly be augmented by this service that's your like personal coach, personal assistant, personal like whatever you need. And that's the moment we're trying to build with everybody when we do training.
I'm doing a newsletter every day for the event that I'm sending out, right? And 2 days ago, I think the lead story was Banco Santander, which is headquartered down in Miami in the U.S., is now partnered up with Google to offer through their they have a open academy where they have lessons available, basic stuff for, but anybody in the world globally can come and get it's called AI and practical applications, just what you were talking about, right? How to start using it in your email, how to start using it in your interaction with your family to create an invitation for the family picnic, that sort of thing, right? Just, day-to-day stuff that you're doing, right? I don't know if you guys know Chris Brown. He's a local guy here. He asked me this morning. He sent me a thing on the messenger, and he's like, "Hey, I'm doing a thing, and we're comparing all the AR, VR headsets." And he gave the Microsoft, the Apple, the litany list, right? And he says, "Do you have any place that shows like a comparison, and all this of it, right?" And so I copied his last two sentences. I went to the Meta AI on my WhatsApp, right? And I pasted it and I copied it and I sent it back to him. And I said, and you might want to take each one and drill down from it. A half hour later, he sent me a matrix that the Copilot had done for him. That would have been a week-long study project, and making the matrix would have been a nightmare before, and all the different. I mean, it had categories upon categories, so it's like it did everything for him. And when I was at MIT, I met somebody. He gave me a thing that says, "Hey, if you're doing any workshops, here's a GTP that you can use. You can log into. You put in a subject matter and you put in the hours, and it will generate a workshop for you with all the course materials and everything else." And I put in 4-hour workshop on AI, and it did it. Seriously, all the course materials, all the booklets, all the study, everything. And I was like, it's so quick, right? So Justin, you're the futurist, you're the accelerationist. Where is this all going? Are we not even going to have a screen in front of us? Are we just going to say, "Hey, make a matrix," and it's going to know what a matrix is, and we're going to trust it so much that we're just going to say, "Hey, send that matrix and go post that for me now," right?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is like you don't actually need the matrix, right? Like the matrix is actually the hack, right? Because all the matrix is doing is letting you compare. You're just going to ask it to tell you the best thing and give you the argument why, right? Why look at a matrix? Why create these kind of bullshit interstitial documents, right? When all we're really trying to get to is a conclusion. I mean, at the end of the day, we're after knowledge most of the time. And so many of the artifacts are just hacks to communicate knowledge, right? And so a lot of those end up disappearing. And I think that, does this become conversational interfaces? I don't know. I mean, I think that there are a lot of interesting kind of ways to think about this. I think that one thing that is probably going to become a thing is this agent-esque world where you do have an agent or series of agents that work collaboratively with you, and how those get shared and how those get used between people and how the personal versus public and all that kind of thing, I think remains to be seen how that plays out. But I think that's where we're going to end up heading, right? So like your own Clippy, we all get our own Clippy finally, right? After 30 years.
Oh gosh.
And so it's a terrible way to think about it, I realize. But
I got my Clippy right here.
But so I think that's where this heads, and so the world gets a lot easier to use. Now, part of it's going to become a really interesting ergonomic question, I think, for us, right? And I think that part of it is we're actually going to run into some hardware problems as a result of the software now demanding that we create some new hardware interactions, right? Like, so if in a world where you have an agent always on, right? You've seen like AI, I don't know if you've seen the AI pin. There are a few things like this, right? Where people are trying to solve the problem of what is the hardware, what is the ergonomics of using an always on agent, right? Is it here? Is it through glasses, which have been problematic for a decade, right? For most of the population because the ergonomics of it don't work out, right? And so there are these interesting problems where we're going like, computers are easy. You sit down at them, and then we had laptops, and it's like, oh, good, it's a computer, but like it's smaller and you can kind of carry it around, right? But those are still like an interaction where you go to a thing and then you use a tool, right? The future is going to be much more of this embedded thing on your person, right? And so those are the places that I think get really interesting from both a hardware and a software perspective.
Yeah, Meta just released this last week some smaller cut LLMs that obviously are intended for things like the Meta glasses, right? That I got, and other smaller devices. The Rabbit R1 is one that they had. I think they called it a
Fell
large
short.
action. A large action model rather than a large language model. They were trying to get the language model to have effect on hardware and give hardware instructions and do web crawls and order stuff for you and stuff like that. So, I think you're right. And it's going to, they say that there's another iteration of this glass coming that's going to have some kind of a screen on it. It won't be the cube like the Google Glass that I had, but it will be some kind of thing. And then there's that guy Bobinger over in Singapore. He's putting out some round ones called Frame that kind of look like what Steve Jobs wore, and it projects down from the top into the glass, right? I've experienced a lot of this stuff, as you guys know. I don't think the ultimate solution has been derived yet in wearable AI or just wearable tech. Period. I think they're all experiments. This one's about as close as to flawless as I've had, as far as like out of the box setup and works well and doesn't advertise a bunch of stuff that it doesn't do, but we still got a long way to go. So back to Greg Ross. In thinking about that, you're talking with clients, they're giving you their vision, right? But in your position, you're seeing a lot more than they're seeing in their position, right? They're in the middle of the forest and they can't see because there's a bunch of trees around them, and you have a wider perspective of that. So how do and they're like, well, we see it like we're gonna go here, and you're like, dude, if you go to there, you're not going to get to where you really want to go, right? And so how do you show them a longer vision when you're talking with them and when you're dealing with them, as far as like from a client standpoint? How do you convey a longer vision to them to go after something that's so they're shooting where the bird is going to go, right?
I mean, it depends on the client, but I would argue that we typically try and work with them on what their long-term plan is. We're typically trying to work with them on like where they envision everything going, but we don't believe that no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, and so doing some like long-term thinking and planning is a useful exercise, but we prefer to kind of think in terms of what we should do for the next 2 weeks, for the next 6 months of planning ahead is about as far as we kind of want to do, because business is changing so quickly these days that anything like being more agile is actually more useful than having like long-term grandiose positions and visions from most companies. That's obviously not true for every organization. But as long as your mission is correct, as like what you're planning on, what the mission of the company is, you can build product around that mission. You can build systems around that mission that can be very forward thinking. They just need to take that first step, especially with technology, because it's iterative, and you like you build your stack of stuff, right? Eventually it becomes like quite a lot to carry, but at the, when you're looking at a blank piece of paper or a new kind of market to move into, the goal is not to like plan the perfect thing. The goal is to like fail as quickly as you possibly can, so you can like work out the next version of the thing that works right. Because the most of the time, your system that you're building has to be put in the hands of users, and when it's perfect in your head, like we'll go and build something with the client, and the second you put it in the hands of the users, the users are like, oh, cool, I know what this is. This is like, you build them a brick, and they're like, oh, I'm going to use this to put out fire. And you're like, wait, no, that's not what I intended it for. Like, what are you doing? And they're like, no, it's really good. Like, I stomped the fire with this brick. And you're like, wait, maybe we should be building like fire extinguishers or something here, right? Like, and the only way you learn to do that is by getting the stuff in people's hands quickly and like getting it tested. And the other thing,
break a product, give it to a user.
Yeah. And the other thing I think you should ask is, I mean, the other thing is, there's a lot that we take for granted about technology as developers or as engineers, right? And there's like so much stuff that's like underneath the tech that most non-hardcore technologists will like know about. Like, let's say you want to use OpenAI to build something, and you are a financial company, right? Then, and it's going to process data in the background. Is that going to fit with your privacy concerns? Is that going to like break your SOC 2 Type 2 compliance? Is that going to like, how's that data moving back and forth? And like, if you are like, oh, we'll just send it off there, like, is it going to be auditable? Like, these are like weird questions that people like probably should ask, but don't, because they're like, oh, I see it working in ChatGPT, we can just use that, right? So, I mean, those are interesting questions to like answer.
So I read a post the other day that said the world's most popular programming language now is English, because essentially everybody now, just like the internet made everybody a journalist, now everybody essentially can be a programmer, right? And apparently everybody can be an artist, and everybody can be a videographer, and everybody can be just about anything they want to be now with this stuff. So how? I've heard, banks are using either, generated code, AI generated code, and or no code application, right? Lower no code applications. Are any of these disruptions kind of, are they having any effect on your business and what you do, or do they come screaming to you after they tried to do it themselves and, please straighten this out for me now, because like I really screwed this up, right? How is that stuff affecting your business?
I can give you two different answers, right? Well, I can give you an answer, then I can maybe hand off to the other guys. But we use some low code, no code tools. We use AI systems to help us write code. We have co-pilots right in our development environments that help us generate stuff and write tests for us and things like that. And it's great. It can, I don't know, one of our best developers the other day said he's gotten about 1/3 quicker. He didn't put it that way. He put it in like a weird way, but like he said he's gotten about 1/3 quicker because of this stuff. That doesn't mean that it's taken him out of the position, but he's being about 33% more effective. On the flip side of that, we had a client come in the door, and they had basically used a low code, no code tool over a number of years internally with some very smart people who were technical but not developers, and they'd built an entire ERP system for the organization. And he had just like, the thing was running this entire company that did a whole bunch of stuff for FEMA, and it was like this enormous compliant heavy company. And he came to me and he said, hey, can you look at this? Like, we've just gotten to a point where like I can't make it do any more of the stuff it can do. And like, to be honest, what he had built was amazing. Like, amazing what he had built on his own of like 5 years working on this thing with these low code tools. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I mean, you could rebuild this all by hand the old-fashioned way, and we could then do anything. We can make bricks fly in that case, right? They can fly to the fire. And there's so much more you can do with handwritten code. Is that I can't believe I'm saying that kind of stuff now.
Artisanal.
Yeah, artisanal
Yeah,
code, right?
Oh,
Handcrafted.
Yeah, but he said like, how much do you think this would cost to like rebuild? And I'm like, I don't know, like $1 million or something. And he was like, what? What are you saying? Like, so the problem is like, if you go the low code no code route, it is fine for most situations, but most people don't come to us for like, I want to like build this like thing that goes from A to B and then sends an email. That you can do on your own these days. You come to us if you're like, we want to build a highly compliant, like super secure, super scalable system that is going to like be used by lots of people, or like we don't want hackers getting involved in it, and we want to be able to be extensible forever. And that's really where kind of like you would still use companies like us.
Well,
But
if you
I'm
create
curious
that
as to what
unhacked,
Justin and Greg have to say as well.
Well, I've got a couple angles here. The first one, just to respond to what you said, is all of these, like having AI write the code for you, using low code, no code tools. This is like the IKEA of code. Like there's a set of components, and if you buy a dresser, it's going to give you all the components that you need to build that dresser. Sometimes you can buy a dresser and a shelf, and you can like those parts connect to each other, and you can there's this whole thing of IKEA hacks where you take different pieces and you merge them together into a new Franken piece of furniture. But you're never going to take your IKEA hacked dresser to a furniture maker and say, "Hey, take it from here. I got it started for you." Right? That's just not going to happen.
I love that.
The second part is that what AI, like the best thing that AI does for us today is it like has killed blank page syndrome. Like if you don't know where to start, it will give you a starting point, like hands down. And it gives you a starting point with code, which is amazing. But it still can't make a change to the code next week because the requirements changed, and then a week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that, and the weekend after that. And it's not a context problem. It's not a long-term memory problem that's going to be really solvable in the AI, because some of it is just like knowing the things that aren't written in the code, right? It's knowing what that software is supposed to do, what customer complaints that there were the last week about it. That's never going to be written down. It's never going to be in a place that it'll be a long time before it's in a place where the AI can see it and take all that into account. So today, get you started. And that's awesome. And if the starting point is does the job, rock and roll.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
To follow up on that, Justin, that kind of walks right into the UX and the elegance aspect of it, right? And I think that's probably like what you're going to cover, right? Like, does it make it better, smoother, easier to work with? Is the UX better? Is the UI better? All that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like with the low code, no code, and some code tools, these are kind of like starting to lay out on this kind of stratification of how much code is injected into the experience. I think one thing that is exciting is that they have become a lot easier to use and a lot better and a lot higher quality products, right? And I think to build on what Greg and Greg were saying, I think that like it is the ideal place to prove the thesis of whatever you're trying to prove, right? Whenever we build things, right, essentially we're trying to ask two fundamental questions, which is, can I do a thing? And is it valuable for me to do that thing, right? And sometimes we know it's valuable because we're just solving a problem that we need, right? So then the question just becomes, can I do it, right? And if we're building something for other people, we have to answer both questions. Well, both of those questions require proving the answer, right? You can't get to that answer by thinking about it. You have to get to that answer most of the time by making a thing and seeing if it works, right? It's sort of like having an idea for a recipe in your head, right? Like it's not enough. Like, you have to make it to see how it actually turns out. You can't just sort of imagine how it's going to turn out, right? Despite how much research you do about the flavors and how they interact, you have to get it in place, right? To actually understand and see it. And so I think from that perspective, that kind of tooling and AI generated code, obviously these kind of things allow you to move through that phase much, much faster. And to get to the point where you go, okay, actually, we can't do this. Or now that we've gotten this far, what we have learned is, and this is what usually happens in a lot of sufficiently complex apps, is we've gotten to a point where, okay, we can do kind of a lot of it, but we want to do it in a very specific way, which now means we got to dust off the fingers and we have to actually write some code to actually get us the last mile of that product delivery, right? And then I think that, like, also there's another thing that will happen, and there's going to be some pressure put on this, because when you're engaging with AI tools through these low code and no code tools, right? It's like very black boxy, right? You don't really know what's happening. There's like data kind of moving in and out, right? Your customers are interacting with that data, right? Whereas if you're writing code, you can get so much of a better look at what's happening and monitor that. And this has such big compliance implications, right? And we're working on a product right now called Lattice that helps us solve a lot of these problems, which is to allow you to really see what's in that pipeline and to understand, like, are we sending PII out to a server we don't understand? Are we putting customer data at risk? Are we in compliance with all the laws, with the kind of things that we're telling back to our customers? These are things that, like, CISOs and the folks who are in charge of compliance and legal organizations right now are really grappling to understand. And being able to get that level of instrumentation, you kind of have to step into the code, right? And so I think you get to a point where you can prove things out right now, but we're still a little ways away from it being just the silver bullet.
Great. So, where's it all going? Who wants to grab that one? What's the let's draw it all together. Where's it all going? What's it all doing here? Who wants to go first? Get all three of you.
I think the person on this panel who's giving the talk about sci-fi, what we learned from sci-fi about the future, should answer that question.
Hilferding has got crazy theories. He reads so many books that I don't know. His brain is a weird place to be. Ask him about it.
But I appreciate the opportunity to plug my talk. Where is it going has already been written. It has already been shared. We've already seen it. We've heard it. It's been in movies. It's been in books. Like, it's all out there for us already. Our opportunity now is to actually go back and pay attention to what all that stuff said and start to reverse engineer it. And my favorite example of this is, like, the reason Google has evolved the way that it has evolved is because they wanted to build the ship's computer from Star Trek. And there's interviews of the founders where this is their explicit stated goal. There's interviews years later of, like, people on the product team that are like, yeah, that wasn't just PR. That's literally our goalpost for Google, is that we are recreating the ship's computer. And the thing is that with generative AI, we suddenly now see this stuff it's going to be possible. A lot of it's going to be possible in the next few years. It's just a matter of, like, how fast we get there. And it's pretty crazy. I will say one specific thing about the future, and it's about chatbots. Today, we're building chatbots for humans to use, and very soon, the vast majority of the users of your chatbot will be other AIs. And that doesn't mean you should wait. Like, having a chatbot for your business makes sense, but thinking about it as, like, you're building this thing for humans forever? No. You're building V1 of the thing that's going to be for other AIs. And starting to think about that, like, AI to AI world connects back to what Justin Davis was talking about earlier. It's going to be a whole different paradigm.
There you go.
I think I'll add on and say that I think one of the things that excites me about the future and about what we're going to be able to do is I kind of refer to it as hyper personalization at scale, right? Where we are still very much in an industrial revolution type of world, right? And the assembly line allowed us to create a lot of things really fast, right? But it by definition required standardization. And it required that us build categories of things that people could kind of fit into enough, right? But not everything, you just kind of have to find the one that is close enough to the thing that you like, right? Because we can only manufacture so many types of things on assembly line. In the future, individuals get services and products delivered to them at the scale of the individual. The way that I interact with my financial advisor, the annual report that I get as a shareholder is not the same as the annual report that you get as a shareholder, right? We get a completely different experience because we care about different things, right? We have a different context in our life. And that's where I think we are going to break out of this industrial revolution assembly line mentality and get back to actually like boutique at scale, which is really, really interesting and is going to raise the quality of life for a lot of people.
Just in the basics of everyday living, right? Buying groceries, right? I don't need 2 steaks in a package. I live alone, right? I need 1 steak in a package, right? I know I can go to the butcher, but I don't want to have to, right? You know what I mean? I totally agree with that. Cigarettes are sold in packs and then in cartons, right? It's and people consume based on that packaging because they think, hey, I got to buy a pack of cigarettes every day. I got to hurry up and consume this pack because it's time for me to buy my next pack, right? It standardizes the people because of the standardization of the product, right? And so if we're less free of standards and products, we're more free as people. Mentally and physically idea. And spiritually, right? Psychologically, everything. So
and I'm way more hooked on OpenAI than I am on like ChatGPT than I could ever be on nicotine. So I think your analogy. Like, it was down the other day. I'm like, I can't work. I'm going to take the day off.
It's been like the blank page ending, right? I totally agree with that. I used to sit there and struggle starting to write a blog post or writing a script for a video or anything, right? Even just a paragraph on a website, right? And now it's done, right? Seconds. I give it my basic premise, and in seconds I got it. Best assistant I ever had, right? So let's draw it up to an end here. We're coming into an hour. I want to be respectful. It's Friday afternoon for you guys and me too. So how do people reach you? How if somebody wants to get on board and be a Sourcetoad client and utilize some of this brain power, how do they reach you, Greg?
You can go to our website at sourcetoad.com. That's like source code, but like the frog kind of thing, like the toad and code makes it replace. Or you can email us at info@sourcetoad.com. Pretty easy. Great.
And all you guys are available there, and many more. You've really got the A hires, the cream of the crop of Tampa Bay. I know all of you personally, and Greg's assembled a fantastic team, and really has got it. So and Justin and Greg are both going to be speaking at the Fin+AI on 2 different topics and 2 different tracks altogether. And I'm sure Greg will be down there hanging out, and you'll get a chance to meet him as well. And maybe a few of the other associates, Sourcetoad. But we're all looking forward to seeing you guys there. It's October 2 through 4 at Le Meridian, Dania Beach. And we'll see you there. www.finaiconference.com. Look forward to seeing everyone there. And hang around for 1 minute, guys. We got to wait for the uploads to finish before we can sign out. But I'll turn off the record now. Thanks again, guys, for showing up this afternoon, and
thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having us, Bruce.
Thanks, Rick.